Great to see everybody here. This is going to be a great day here at Anthem Church. We're excited to have each and every one of you with us. If you're a guest with us here today, my name is Brad. I serve as lead pastor here at Anthem, and we are excited that you've joined us here this morning for what we call Vision Sunday. My goal this morning is to talk about where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, and talk about what is God's mission and purpose here for our church. If you have a Bible this morning, you can open with me to Matthew chapter 28. Verse 18, and my goal in this is to talk about what is Jesus' last words to the church, because Jesus' last words to the church are still valid and relevant to every church and every place and every time right up to today, and that includes us as Anthem Church. God, what did you say through Jesus before you left this world to go be with the Father again? Matthew chapter 28. Verse 18, I want to get right to the passage this morning. Jesus said in his final words to his disciples as he gathered them together, as they began to understand that he's about to leave them and go back to the Father, and they don't totally understand what that means. They're scared about what that means. And he says, look, you're going to probably be confused about what to do next. So let me just give you some marching orders before I leave you so that you will always write them down, recite them, and remember them, and let that engage every next step you had. Matthew chapter 28, verse 18. Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Jesus could have said so many things to them at those last moments, but these are the words that Jesus chose here and in the very beginning of the book of Acts to say, this is what you need to remember before I leave you. And what does Jesus leave us with? He leaves us with his heart. What is Jesus' heart? Jesus has a heart for every person and every place and every nation of every ethnicity, every single person who doesn't know him. He loves them, he cares for them, and he says, before I leave this world, I know you're going to have a tendency to want to turn inward and say, look, we're so glad what Jesus did for us, so we're just going to meet together and we're going to pray, and we're not going to go out to the rest of the world because it's scary out there. We don't know them. We don't know how they'll receive us, and you're going to want to turn inward. And he says, but that's not what I want you to do. I want you to turn it inside out. I want you to go into all the world to share what Jesus has done for you, to share ultimately, as he would say, what I have done on your behalf. And I want you to go and make disciples. That's true followers of Jesus. I want you to preach, and I want you to baptize, and I want you to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Jesus says, this is my heart. If you're wondering what you should do next, do what I've shown you to do. As I've reached out, as I've preached, as I've taught, as I've healed, as I purchased salvation, no small deal, for all of mankind upon a cross, I want you to go into all the world, and I want you to tell everybody you can about this incredible story, the greatest story that's ever been told. And so what does Jesus leave us with? He leaves us with some marching orders, some to-do items, but more than that, he leaves us with his heart. And what is Jesus' heart? He has a heart for everyone, everywhere, all throughout the history of all of humanity, that all might know the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And he says to his disciples, I think you're going to have a tendency to think this was really just about you, and it was in a sense about you, but it's not just about you. It's really about people you've never met and far reaches of the world that you don't know their name, you don't know how to speak their language, you don't know how to even get to them and travel to them. I want you to care about those people because I care about those people as well. And so he says, what is this thing that I'm creating called? It's called a church, but what is the purpose of the church? The purpose of the church is what I says right here to them. This is the mission of the church, to go, make disciples, preach, baptize, teach. And he says, this is the promise, I am with you always, meaning you don't have the strength to do it on your own. Anybody ever felt like that? You hear this message and you're like, yes, I agree with that. I want to do that, but how do I do that? And Jesus says, I know you're going to feel like inadequate and unable to do it, but my Spirit is going to be with you. I'm going to be with you always, not sometimes, not on good days and not on bad days. I'm going to be with you always to the very end of the age. That's an incredible promise to us. You know, in life, definitions of words make a big difference. Sometimes you can be talking about the same thing, but really not talking about the same thing. Sometimes I get in conversation with our kids. They're still learning, like, totally what words mean. And we're talking about substitute teachers. And we're like, what does substitute mean? I was like, that's a good question, trying to define that. So definitions of words matter for us to communicate with one another. I want to talk about the definition of a church. What is a church? Because we could define it so many ways, and there's many brilliant people who have defined it better than I can define it here this morning. But here's a definition from Matthew 28 I want to give to us about what is a church. A church is the people of God who've rallied around the mission of God and are do it in the power and with the presence of God alongside them. So that's what he says, you're going to do this. There's a mission. I want you to be about the mission. You got to be my people. You got to be my followers first to be part of the church. The people of God rallied around the mission of God. And it is God's mission. It's not really even our mission. It's God's mission. Jesus left heaven for earth on a rescue mission, and he just invited us to participate with him and what he's already doing. And honestly, the truth is, if I don't participate, he's still going to do it. I mean, he's not going to be like, oh, Brad didn't show up today. I'm not going to be able to complete the mission. It's like, he's going to still do it, but I'm going to miss out on the journey of what God might want to do through me. And some people it might get more complicated for him to use other people to get to the people he wants to reach, because he wants to use me to reach specific people that he's called me to. The people of God rallied around the mission of God and doing it in the power and with the presence of God alongside them. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. He says, I don't want you to be my people and do my mission if you don't have my presence, because it's not going to go where it needs to go. That is a church. And so why do we exist? Why do we exist as a church? Why does the church exist? Not just Anthem Church. Why does the church, the big church, all around the world, in places and times that we'll never live, even hundreds of years ago and 100 years after us, if Jesus doesn't return first, why does it exist? The church exists to complete what Jesus started. That's it in the simplicity. We exist to complete what Jesus started. See, the reality is in this life, I think about my life, I think about how sometimes I get sick, as I was the last couple weeks, had a hard time preaching last week, although apparently most of you didn't notice, so that's great. You know, praise God for that. But I felt terrible preaching last week, couldn't preach the week before, and I'm like, our bodies break down, right? Things in this world aren't right. Society is broken. Relationships are broken. There's so much broken in this world. And I say, God, I get where I'm going, and it's not broken. And honestly, I wouldn't mind speeding up. I mean, I love my wife. I love my kids. I don't really want to leave them in that sense. But if I could go to be with you where there is nothing broken, great. And yet Jesus has me here and has you here, at least today. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, maybe not 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever it is. God's in charge of how long we live and where we live. But he has us here, and why does he have us here? Because he wants us to complete and finish what he started from the very beginning, when he left heaven for earth to begin that great mission that he started all the way with Adam and Eve as he sought them out in the garden after they sinned. He knew they sinned, but he went on a rescue mission to go find them and say, what have you done? Why would you do that? And to pull them back into relationship with himself. And he said, that's the great mission that's been happening from the very beginning. And I want you, Brad, and I want every person that knows me to have a relationship with me, take on the mission that I have started, and to do it in the power of the Holy Spirit. Here at Anthem, we have a unique part to play in that. We are one church in one city in one time in history, and so we're not all of God's plan. Aren't you glad about that, actually? I mean, that takes some weight off my shoulder. Like, we're not it, and yet we have a unique part to play, and we have to act and pray and expect in such a way that we have to assume that no other church is going to stand in the gaps that we're going to stand in, that some people are not going to be reached if we don't step forward and do what Jesus tells us to. If we don't obey what God has told us to do, that there's going to be some ramifications in the world. And so we say, God, will you help us to do what you've called us to do, and help us to play the unique part that you've called us to play as a church. We have a phrase we say, we are Anthem. It was in the video this morning. That comes from the simplicity of a year and a half ago, we didn't even know what to call ourselves. We didn't have a name. So we're like, what are we? We're like, well, we're a church. We have the mission of God. God's with us. We move forward. Names aren't as critical as anything else. But we're like, we don't know what even to call ourselves. And at some moment, we prayed, and we circled the wagons, and we sought God. And God provided a name that was actually quite unexpected in our early list of ideas. And God brought that name forward, and we said, I think that's who we are. And finally, we could look at each other and say, who are we? Like, we're Anthem. We are Anthem. That's who we are. And we have a unique part to play because of how unique our history and how God has put us together to accomplish his mission in a specific way through us. This morning, what I want to do is I want to talk about our anthems, because we have 4 anthems as a church, and I want to lay down some detail related to them. I want to give some specifics, some announcements, some things we're excited about, praying about, related to each one of them, so that you can rally with us around them, and you can participate in them, so you can get involved in them and ask God, how do you want me to play a part in what's happening in the years to come? We have 4 anthems. The first anthem is this: we make much of Jesus. It's a simple anthem. It's really what every person's life is supposed to be about. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you can call it, my life is to glorify God. You can say it like that. You can say it 100 different ways. But at the end of the day, you say, it's really not about me. It's really about him and his glory and his name and his renown and his purposes and his kingdom and his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. I say that's what it's about. And so we as a church say we exist to make much of Jesus. In fact, in our very first Sunday as a church, I said, look, this could become about a lot of other things, but may this only ever always be about Jesus. May it only ever always be about Jesus. That's my prayer that day, today, every day. May my life not be about Brad. May it only ever always be about Jesus. And may our church here at Anthem Church not degenerate into something less. And churches do. You ever been in a church before? Churches can degenerate into something less than the main thing. So we say, let's let secondary be secondary and primary be primary. And primary is a person. It's not an idea, not a philosophy. It's a person. And that person's name is Jesus Christ. Grateful for you guys. Thanks for serving with kids this morning. It's awesome. No problem. There you go. It's great. We're going to highlight you in a minute, actually. Okay, we make much of Jesus. That speaks to the culture of worship that we're creating. I'm not talking about style. In fact, if we all got on our radios and drove out of here this morning, there'd probably be every kind of music you can imagine just out of this parking lot. And we're a pretty similar group of people. So we're not talking about styles or preferences. We're talking about a heart for worship, right? What is worship? Worship is about making much of God, his name, his character, his purposes. We want to make much of Jesus. So when we come in this room, the culture we're creating is a group of people who love Jesus, want to live for Jesus, and know that their life is not about themselves, but about the person of Jesus. So when we sing, whether it's loud or whether it's quiet, we know that is about the person of Jesus. God, well, you deserve our worship. You deserve the glory that you are due. And so when we come together in this room, and it's not just me alone, but there's hundreds of us together, my heart grows inside of me because I'm singing alongside brothers and sisters in Christ who also love Jesus and want to make much of Jesus with their life, with their song, with their prayers, with their decisions in their life. It speaks to the kind of preaching that we do, and I know I'm at the center of that, but our preaching is Christ-centered. I don't know if you've been here very long, you hear it. Everything we preach is Christ-centered. We put Jesus at the center of every story. Let me give you an example. We give this story in the Old Testament about David and Goliath. What an incredible story. That's my favorite story growing up. Is like David gets the rock, so I'm like, yeah, I can go out on the playground and throw rocks at people. And so those are the things you learn like as a 7-year-old that don't quite connect with the story, but those are the things you think about. We have the story like David and Goliath, and you preach the story of David and Goliath, and you talk about the story of David and Goliath, and it is a real story, not a fairy tale just for us to learn some good principles, though we do. It's a real thing that happened in history, so we preach that story. But Christ-centered preaching is to say, wasn't it amazing how David, by the strength of God, killed Goliath? But Jesus is the true and better David, who came to conquer the Goliath of sin and death. That every story throughout all the Bible points to the one who was coming and who is coming again when he chooses to return for his people. That's what it means to put Christ at the center, to make it not about just how-tos, how to have a better life, how to have a better marriage. Those are important things. We want to help people with marriage and help with life and help with finances. We're not here to do a bunch of how-tos. We're here to magnify the name of Jesus, who is the name that is above every knee, the name by which every person, whether they believe or not in this life, will one day bow before him when they recognize him, when they encounter him, they're like, you are the King of the universe. Let's make much of him now. Let's bow now instead of bowing later unexpectedly before him. In fact, one celebration I want to give this morning is in 2017, over the last 12 months before this January, every Sunday we give decisions for people to give their life to Christ, rededicate their life to Christ, make a decision to be baptized. If you're here this morning, you feel far from God, never given yourself to Jesus to start a relationship, never been baptized, we encourage you to do those steps. Those are huge breakthroughs spiritually in every single person's life. If you have questions about that, we'd love to answer. But every Sunday, just about, we give an opportunity for people to make those decisions. Over the last 12 months, we had 102 decisions made in this room, literally in this room. I'm not talking about mission trips where a lot of other decisions happen. I'm not talking about other baptisms that happen in another place in the world. Thank God for that. But right here in this room, 102 people have raised their hand to give their life to Jesus or rededicate their life to Jesus. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? And that happens not because we're so good at anything. It's because we're making much of Jesus, and Jesus is the one that draws people to himself. He says, if you lift me up, I will draw all men to myself. And so we say, God, help us lift you up so that you can do the miraculous work of calling men and women to yourself. It speaks to, yes, our culture worship, the Christ-centered preaching, what we're doing, Christ-centered everything. It speaks to the culture of inviting that we are creating here where people are bringing people to church. And I just want to say that is an underestimated important role that we play in the world around us. It's just the simplicity of inviting people into an environment where they can begin to hear the dots connected of their faith. Because a lot of people out there believe or hope maybe there is a God. They don't know what to believe. There's so many different ideas. I understand all that. That's how I would be as well if I hadn't learned what I did about Jesus and encountered him for myself. But most people hope or believe that there is a God. There are some that may not believe any or been so hurt by something that causes them to react against that thought. But I believe that there is a God. But people are never going to connect the belief and hope in a God, a creator, with the message that Jesus left heaven for earth, went to a cross, paid for sin once and for all, and then rose again on the third day and is coming back. You're just never going to connect those dots on your own unless you read the Bible for yourself, unless you can encounter other people who can explain things to you, unless you go to a church where someone can, like I am doing right now, clearly define the gospel and what it means and what actually happened. So you and I play a role. If we say we want to make much of Jesus, that means helping other people to encounter Jesus, helping other people to follow Jesus, sharing Jesus' story with other people so that they can understand it for themselves and play it out. And so that's what we're doing as a church. We're saying, God, will you use us to help other people follow you? Not just ourselves, not just turn inward, not just to be a church where like, okay, we love to come to church, we feel good about it, we feel inspired by it, but then we say, you know what, other people need this. And other people need to be encountered with the gospel and the person of Jesus. Next week is Friends Day for us. That's a great next step. How you can be involved is just say, I was my little boy on the front row in first service at the end. He's like, how do I invite my friends to Friends Day? I was like, you actually were listening. I'm shocked. He's like, I invited them all last year. None of them came. I was so mad. I was like, well, don't be mad at them. Just ask them again. You know, that happens. I was like, did you give them anything? You know, let's get some cards so you can give them so they know what you're actually telling them. He's like, okay. It's like, you got 5 days to invite as many as you can. He's like, do I win a prize? I was like, I don't know, you know. Friends Days next week. Be a great Sunday for us just to introduce a number of new people into our church. And by the way, next Sunday, speaking of Christ-centered preaching, next Sunday we're starting a brand new series called Storyteller, about the greatest storyteller that ever lived. And we're going to walk through the parables of Jesus, which are super complicated and inspiring and cause you ask questions that you don't know how to answer. This is Jesus who taught in such a way that causes people's hearts to come alive with questions and thoughts. And so we're going to walk for the 6 weeks starting next Sunday through the parables of Jesus, the very well-known parables like the Good Samaritan and like the parable of the talents, all the way down to parables maybe you've never really understood before, and we're going to walk through those together. Excited for that. That'll start on Friends Day, so invite friends and family to that. And by the way, last but not least, on Making Much of Jesus, Easter is 8 weeks from now. Last year we had over 700 people here on our property for Easter, not including our Ethiopian church that many of you don't even realize we have meeting every single Sunday here on our property. Not including them, we had over 700, I think it was 750 people here on our property for Easter. That's 8 weeks away. Doesn't that sound way too early? 8 weeks away? It's only January. It's like, it's too early. It's February. I missed January, but 8 weeks away. But that's going to be an incredible opportunity for us to make much of Jesus. Good Friday, Easter, and just do an incredible outreach to our community, see lives change forever and ever and ever. And that's our prayer together. Number one, anthem. We make much of Jesus. The second anthem that we rally around as a church is we do whatever it takes. We are a people who maybe not yet, but are aspiring to be a people who do whatever it takes to complete the mission that God has given to us. Not do just what's comfortable or what's possible or what's easy, but to do actually the hard work, the whatever it takes kind of work of reaching out like Christine and I. You know, we go through seasons where we're super excited about it and seasons where we kind of forget about our neighbors, you know, and then we like go back to them and we realize like they don't understand the message of Jesus. We have a Pakistani family who, by the way, liked one of our Facebook posts from our church the other day. I was like, what in the world just happened? I don't even know how she saw it, what happened. She doesn't follow us. She's never been into our church. I don't know that her husband would let her come if she wanted to come, or her kids come if they even wanted to come. So we keep praying for them and reaching out to them and building a relationship. And during Christmas time, they said, why don't you come over? We bought presents so we could have some Americans to celebrate Christmas with. We bought some presents for you. Like, you bought presents for us so you can like do Christmas because you don't do Christmas. And we're like, okay, so we bought presents for them, and they showed up, and the kids all exchanged presents, and we spent a couple hours in their house, and that was the first Christmas they've ever celebrated. I'm like, God's doing something, right? I mean, right now it's just about presents, but Christmas, like, Jesus' name is in the holiday. It's like, they know it's about Jesus. That is incredible. We want to be a people who do whatever it takes, which means we as a church want to be an externally focused church, which might seem simple, but most churches actually trend towards being internally focused. Most people tend towards being more self-focused, right? And so it makes sense if you get a bunch of people together, they'll become more self-focused. But Jesus didn't want his church to be self-focused. He wanted to be others-focused, Jesus-focused, and others-focused, to love God and love people. So we say, we're going to be an externally focused church, which maybe for some people are like, maybe that's not the church I want to be part of. Maybe I want to be a different kind of church. I hope that you don't. I don't think you should. But we are going to be an externally focused church unapologetically. We're going to reach out to the schools. We're going to reach around the world. We're going to pray for people we don't know. We're going to try to reach out to our neighbors and our coworkers and our family and friends who don't know Jesus. And we're going to give away from ourselves financially and with our prayers so that we can be focused on people who don't yet know Jesus. That is our line in the sand. That is one of our anthems. And we are going to rally around that anthem to do whatever it takes. I have a couple of reports to give on that front. One of the things we did back in November is something called Give Back Sunday. Many of you were here. Some of you may not have been here. We like to raise on one Sunday and the weeks around it as much money as we possibly can and give 100% of that away from Anthem Church to the mission of Jesus to do whatever it takes. That's just what's in our culture. We've put that down, a line in the sand. We want to raise as much as possible. This last November, I've reported a couple times, but I'll do it again. We raised $59,653 towards those incredible efforts, which is great. Yes. And that's not one or two people giving a lot of money. That is hundreds of people giving money, everything from $10 to thousands of dollars together as a church. I want to give 2 reports related to that. We have missionaries, a missionary couple, Jason and Morgan Culp, that are in Germany. And they're in Germany because God has given them a vision to reach out to Arabic-speaking refugees. Many of you probably read the news. Germany opened itself up a lot to especially a lot of Syrian refugees and some other countries around there. And so they had this big influx of Arabic-speaking Muslims who've come into Germany who are fleeing war. Well, Jason and Morgan had on their hearts that God one day would use them to reach out to Arabic-speaking Muslims. They thought it would be in the Middle East, but you know how God always has his plans. God took them and placed them in Germany, not to reach Germans, but to reach Arabic-speaking refugees who have come there from a great distance. So we reached out to Jason and Morgan, and we said, we have Give Back Sunday coming up in weeks, months. I don't remember when we reached out, and we said, what could we do to step alongside you, to partner with you, to further what's in your heart to reach people there in Germany? And we said, we don't have an idea. We're not telling you what you need to do with it. We're just asking you, do you have a vision for something you cannot pay for that we could, the people in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who will never meet those people, but could we raise some funds to give to you? And they said, you know what, we've had this dream, this idea that we'd like to have this conference, this outreach to a bunch of the Arabic-speaking refugees around us, and if you could like pay for somebody to cater a bunch of food and help us with this conference, that would be amazing. So they did that. I want to show this picture. This is up on the screen. Before this picture, this is a church of about 10 people, Jason and Morgan, 10 people, and they began to ask the question, like, God, maybe you're not in this. They're having trouble reaching out, getting anybody else involved, and they're praying, and they're asking God to help them, and they're struggling. And so they did this outreach, and we together funded the outreach with them. They said that they had 30 non-Christian Arabs come. And once again, they were just 10 people. 30 non-Christian Arabs come for this dinner that they cater in this conference where they were able to explain who Jesus is, and a lot of the people got involved. Isn't that incredible? And here's the next detail on it. They were a church of about 10 people saying, maybe God's not in it, and at the end of it, they're now a church of 30 people. And they're saying, God is in this. Let's not give up. Let's keep going. Let's keep praying. Let's keep giving our efforts, because look what God is doing among us. And that's something we get to be part of all the way from here. Isn't that incredible? And God is good. One of the other reports we have from Give Back Sunday is Kingdom Kids has this vision. Christy Shute, who serves on our staff, but also ultimately spends a lot of hours with Kingdom Kids in Haiti, this organization that she's founded, and all these orphans that they've taken in. And they have this vision to build this House of Hope to extend their ministry in Haiti, a House of Hope, a community center and a Christian school there in Haiti. And so someone had given them some money to help them buy some land to begin to build this Christian school, but it's going to cost a couple $100,000 beginning to end to be able to complete this project that's in front of them, and it's an overwhelming amount of money to raise if you don't know where and who's going to give it to you. And so we asked them, is there something we could do? And so together, as a result of the $60,000 we raised, we were able to give I think it was around $10,000 to the beginning of the building of House of Hope. And there's a video on site from Christy Shute I'd love for you to be able to watch and celebrate with me.
Hey Anthem Church, I'm here in Haiti on the site of House of Hope Christian School and Community Center, and the building is happening right now behind me. They're starting to lay the foundation for the House of Hope facility, and this happened because you helped donate their Give Back Sunday. A lot of your money that you gave to Anthem for Give Back Sunday went to help build this facility right here in Haiti called House of Hope Christian School and Community Center. It's going to help so many kids in the future get a good Christian education and help so many families have their basic needs taken care of, and help so many children and families get to know the Lord. So thank you so much for helping us make a difference in Haiti. We appreciate you so much.
That's incredible. We put our hands together for that as well. it's just exciting to be part of this bigger mission that God's doing. I mean, this is God's mission, and he's just invited us to be part of it, and then we get to see eternities are going to be changed because of just simple thing. A church in Tulsa, Oklahoma gets to be part of this inbreaking of the gospel into the lives of people who don't even expect it's coming their way, and Jesus is going to change their life forever, including children in Haiti. Some of you said, we'll never go to Haiti in our life. But we get to be part of praying for and supporting what's happening. That's incredible, and that's part of whatever it takes. One of the things that we're committed to as a church in an incredible way, one of my favorite things we do all year that's going to happen again this year is called Feed My Starving Children, where we get to feed hundreds of children on an annual basis. Last year we packed 357,000 and change meals together as a church, where we raised something $60,000 or something to pack all those meals and pack it together. This spring at the end of April, as part of whatever it takes, we're going to be packing meals again for Feed My Starving Children in our gymnasium, and just praying that God would allow us to feed as many kids as we possibly can, because often a heart cannot open fully to the gospel if they're struggling with the simplicity of a meal. So we say, Lord, can we provide some of the simplicity of a meal and pray that the heart might open to the fullness of the gospel? And so we do that together. Excited for that again this April. Speaking of which, whatever it takes, we have 9 global trips that are happening this year. Let me list some of the places that we're going, places that I'd like some of you to begin praying about and thinking about and jump in with us so that we can fill all of the trips that we have going. We're going to Asia. Excited about that trip, super excited. Guatemala, Camp Barnabas, incredible ministry as we reach out to kids that have so many special needs. Uganda, Mexico, Haiti, and beyond. That's world-changing and it's life-changing when you go on a trip like that. If you haven't been on a trip, I just want to say that's one of the biggest life-changing spiritual moments you could possibly do this next year. Would love for every single person to pray about and think about being part of one of those trips and seeing what God might do in and through you as a result of that. Whatever it takes, we do whatever it takes. And ultimately, we join with churches who have put the Great Commission at the center, put Jesus at the center, and saying, you know what, the church doesn't exist for us. I mean, that's sort of a wake-up call. We are blessed by the church. We're connected in the church, and there's a lot of things that happen in our lives as a result of being part of a church that wouldn't happen if we were on our own, but the church does not exist for us. We are the church. There is no church without us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. And we exist to extend the gospel and to complete the mission that God has given to us as a body of believers. That is our second anthem, and that is close to our heart. We make much of Jesus, and we do whatever it takes. And that's an aspiration, that's a dream, that's a prayer that God might help us to do it. The third anthem that we have is we give our best to the next generation. We give our best, not our leftovers, our best to the next generation. Why do we do that? Because some have said that the gospel is just a generation away from extinction. Now, I don't fully believe it, because I know God, a sovereign king, is over control of all the world, and he's not going to let the gospel go extinct. And yet, on a practical level, if all the church did everywhere around the world is turn internal, at the very least, the gospel would go underground, and at worst, it'd become invisible to the world around it. Because of that, we must give our best to the next generation. And by best, I mean the best of our time, the best of our resources, the best of our facility that God has blessed us here with, the best of our leaders, and we have incredible leaders serving with the next generation, the best of our energy, the best of our prayers, the best of our future belongs there. Now, what does it mean to give your best to the next generation? Some of you are followers of Jesus Christ, and you know people that aren't followers of Jesus Christ. It's the baton pass to the next generation of followers of Jesus. They may be your same age, but they're not where you are in your journey. That's the next generation. Some of you are been married for 30, 40 years, and there's some around here that have been married for 2 or 3 years, and they need you to give your best to the next generation so they can have the kind of marriage that you've had, to raise their kids the way that you have. Give your best to the next generation. Some of you are in college, and that looks like giving your best to the students in high school or kids that you know, or you're in high school or junior high, giving your best to the next generation of children who don't yet know the gospel, don't fully understand how good God is, and to give your best to them. As we had some walk in here in the middle of service, they're giving their best right here so that others might understand the gospel, and that is incredible. I think about a teacher I had when I was a child at church, and I don't remember her name off the top of my head this morning, but I remember she was there every time I went into church. You know, I took it for granted. You know, what I was asking as a 9-year-old, like, is it going to be boring today? We're going to use the flannel thing on the wall again with the little characters. Like, what's going to happen? What's in it for me? What I didn't realize is this woman, week in, week out, prepared during the week, showed up. She's probably in her 60s at that point, and gave her best to those room full of kids so that they could connect the dots to the gospel. That's just an inspiration. She didn't have to do that. That wasn't the convenient thing to do. There were other things to do, even if she loved kids, and I'm sure she didn't love us every Sunday. But she still kept giving her best to the next generation. What an incredible inspiration. There's a lot going on around Anthem Kids and Anthem 5-6 around our church. So proud of our leaders, incredible from birth to 6th grade, just giving their best to the next generation. I have a report on that. First of all, this time last year, we have been seeing an influx of kids. There was a lot of kids around our church, a lot of needs to meet, a lot of volunteer needs, a lot of things we were thinking about. And we were averaging, this is a big number, some of you don't realize we have this many kids. Last January, 98 children every Sunday. I'm not talking about our highs or our lows. I'm talking about the average last January, 98 children every single Sunday right here in this building. How many of you didn't realize we had that many children in the church? 98? Well, currently, a year later, we're averaging 131 children every single week. That's 34%. That's literally 33 more children a week than a year ago. God is doing something among us. Either somebody's had a lot of kids, or some of you joined us since then. You became part of Anthem, and you brought your kids here, and they're learning the gospel on a weekly basis, and that's incredible. We had 17 of those children have been baptized over this last period, and we have 98 volunteers that serve in our children's ministry. 98. Well, not every week, but over a month basis, over every 6 weeks or something, there are 98 different people. And some serve every single week, some serve every other week, some serve monthly, some serve as emergencies happen, fill in. But we have 98 different volunteers, and that's incredible. And we're not just keeping kids here so that we can meet together in this room. We're actually investing in them, and they're growing. And they're learning to give. In fact, some of our kids learned about, through some of our leaders, about Hurricane Harvey that happened, and they raised money in their classroom to help a small church that went through the hurricane and it was harmed greatly. They sent their own money, their change, their dollar bills, whatever they could. My boy was part of that and sent money down to Hurricane Harvey. They're learning, and they're learning to worship. I mean, some of the kids probably stand here like this the whole time, like some adults too, in a worship service, but they're learning to sing. And they're learning to care about Jesus. And they don't totally understand it all yet sometimes, but they're learning and they're growing. And they're learning about God's character and his nature. And that's going to change the rest of their life when they hit those really hard moments and they go back to, but God is good and he's never going to let me down. Didn't we sing that this morning? They're learning that now, and that's going to pay off down the road. And we're all going to face things in our life where we're like, I don't know if God's going to come through this time, and this seems too big, and I don't know what's going to happen. And things in life are broken. I get it. People die. People go through sickness, and yet God is still good, and he's never going to let us down, whether it's in this life or the life that is to come. That's just who he is. And we're teaching kids that. That's just incredible. Annette Wagner's not in the room. She's our children's director, been on our staff 1 year, and she's just doing an incredible job. And if you volunteer with her, you know her heart for kids and her heart for the gospel and how she's investing. If you serve, volunteer with kids on any basis, would you just stand so we can just honor you? Thank you here in this room this morning. It's great. Grateful for you. Another update on giving our best to the next generation, Anthem students. God's doing a lot through Anthem students. They're just setting a foundation for the future right now. I feel like God's just setting a great foundation for what is to come. We're praying for increasing influx of students, lives to be changed. God's been setting a great foundation through Pastor Andrew and all that he's doing with them and doing incredible things. We had, in fact, this last weekend, I think last night, we may have hundreds of students that were in this room, more chairs than we have set up even here this morning. Hundreds of students were here worshiping Jesus, learning about Jesus, asking how to take next steps in their faith and their journey with God. And so that's what God's doing. 10 churches coming together as part of the collective. And so we were one of those and one of the host churches for some of the events. And so 10 different churches worth of students. God's going to do something. God can change a city. God can change a city if our students would get on fire for the message of Jesus and the person of Jesus and their relationship with Jesus. So very excited about that. I have a big announcement this morning. We've been praying and thinking a lot about our youth building and what it is and what it could be. And so Andrew and I shot a video this last week that I want to show you that gives a big update about what our plans are going forward for our youth facility. Let's show that video.
Hey Anthem, excited. Pastor Brad here, standing here with Pastor Andrew. We're excited for all that God's doing around our church these days, and we're excited for an announcement we're going to make through our video today. We have an anthem around our church to give our best to the next generation. That's a high value for us to figure out what it looks like for us to impact the lives of children and students with the gospel so that they can understand what it looks like to have a relationship with Jesus. And so, standing here with Pastor Andrew, student pastor, why don't you tell us what you're excited about, what God's doing around our students these days?
Absolutely. I think one of the most exciting things that's happening with Anthem students is we are seeing students begin to step up into leadership positions in the youth group and even without of the youth group. On a Sunday morning, you might see 5, 6 kids walk down with an Anthem Kids shirt on who have just got done serving in our children's area, helping to lead worship, helping to lead those students into a growing relationship with Jesus. And to me, there's no greater joy than seeing your students reaching down to another generation and helping them to follow Jesus. Then on a Wednesday night when we come in here and we have worship together and we have teaching together, we're seeing students begin to be on the greeting team. They're welcoming students as they're coming in. We're seeing students helping to run sound where before it was just adults. So it's just neat what God's doing in our youth group. I feel like laying the foundation for us to just see God reach more students with the gospel of Jesus. I'm so excited about it.
That's super exciting. Grateful for your leadership, grateful for all that you're doing with the students, how you're raising up additional leaders to make a difference. So we're excited. We're standing here in what we call the youth building on the back of our property. Incredible building built in the 1990s with a vision and a dream to make a difference in the lives of kids, adults, students with the gospel so that many people might understand better the person of Jesus Christ. But the building's gotten a little bit dated. Some of you have been in this building, some of you haven't before. And so we're excited to announce today that we've made a big decision to update the entirety of this facility inside and out. We're going to change all the paint, carpet, bathrooms, the external siding on the building, the lighting in the building. We're just going to really refresh this building for years to come so that many students and others might be impacted with the gospel. So we're excited for that. We know many students and parents have been praying and hoping that one day we would do that. We're excited to announce that we're beginning that process here in the next month, and over the next months we're going to continue and do that project. So be praying for that, excited for that. We have a vision for this building that's going to impact a lot of students' lives with the gospel. And number 2, we have a vision that we might be able to use this building for also adult events and other things that happen around our church. And by updating the entirety of the building, we think that that'll make this building really able and appropriate for us to do all those other things that we dream of. So you can do one thing to help us, and that is we'd love to name this building, not just call it the youth building or the building out back or whatever we think of at the moment, but to give it a name so that we say when an event is happening or when youth are meeting, they're meeting at such and such building. And so we'd love your best ideas. We know we're going to get some of your bad ideas as well. We're prepared for that. We'll eliminate those. All joking aside, we would love to have a great name. So will you be praying, thinking about that? You can go to weareanthem.church/news and events. You can submit a name idea. We'll be praying about that. We'll be excited to announce that in the days to come. One last announcement. because people give on a regular basis and sacrifice so much, and because we have such a generous body, we've actually raised all the money already for us to do the remodel that we're going to do to this building. So we have no other money that we need to raise to make this project possible. So excited for that. We can praise God for that, and we'll just continue to pray and move into the future with great joy and anticipation for what God is going to do among us.
Great. That's good. All of our students and parents are saying amen to that. So excited for that. We have chosen, we're investing $150,000 in the building. That's what's going to require for us to update it. So we made that decision. God has provided for us in so many different ways. We're just pulling that straight out of savings. We have a great deal of savings we'll talk about in just a minute as well. So we're excited about that. That'll happen starting over the next months. You know, we're kind of like working on some of the plans still, but that'll definitely be done sometime around or a little bit after Easter. So excited for that. That'll be great. That'll give us a great mid-size room on campus that will be primarily used for student ministry, but also be used for all other things that might happen around our church that will be fully updated. If you've never been in the building, we'll get you in the building hopefully before we update it and after we update it, so you can see the before and after, and that'll be great. So excited for that. So I've said 3 anthems. We make much of Jesus. That's us. That's who we are. We do whatever it takes. That's who we're becoming. That's who we're praying that we might be. We want to give our best to the next generation. An example was we weren't giving our best to the next generation, so let's put our money where our mouth is and give our best to the next generation. And now our 4th anthem is sort of a statement about who we've been and who we are currently, and that is simply this, that we are better together. We are better together. We were 2 churches. If you go back, some of you weren't with us then, but a good 16 months, a year and a half ago, we were 2 churches, and God brought us together with this dream that we might be better together. Now look what God has done, and look what God is doing, and God is not done with us. God has a lot in the future for us. There's a lot more people for us to reach, a lot of seats for us to see continue to be filled up with people's lives being changed with the gospel. We have a lot ahead of us, but we are better together. This is what we see in the early church in Acts chapter 2. If you never read that before, if you turn forward from Matthew 28 where we were and you go forward just a little bit further, you go to the book of Acts, and Acts chapter 2 gives this picture of what's happening in the early church. In the early church, they're devoted to a number of things. They're devoted to the apostles' teaching, meaning they're opening the scriptures together. They're talking about theology, talking about their faith, what they believe. They're devoted to breaking bread with one another, which most likely is some picture of us sharing in communion with one another as they're remembering the gospel together, understand it. But in the middle of it says they were devoted to the fellowship, which doesn't mean they were devoted just to, eating together or just getting together for parties. They were devoted to the fellowship, meaning that early body of believers that they didn't even know what to call themselves because they had this intrinsic belief, because Jesus had taught them that this was true, that they wouldn't be better just them and Jesus. That would be incredible, and Jesus is incredible, and he can do so many things in our lives. But ultimately, they'd be better if they had a relationship with Jesus and a relationship with other people who were also on the journey of walking through faith. And many of you know that's true. You've gone through hardship, or you've had questions about faith, and someone's walked alongside you. And Jesus was there all the time, and he was walking with you too, but some physical person stood with you, talked with you, met with you, helped you connect the dots of what you believe, helped you make better decisions, walked you through marriage struggles, whatever it might be. And you knew at the end of it that you could not be where you are if God had not used that person at that moment to change your life. That's what it means to be better together. It's ultimately at this point not about 2 churches coming together, though that was our history and we build on it. It's a bigger picture about what life in Christ is like when we are together rather than alone. When we're part of the body of Christ. You see that imagery? It's like we have Christ himself meets with us, but there's something we miss when we miss his body. We don't encounter it. We are better together. I want to give some updates related to that. At this point, our body, giving some specific numbers for those that think in these ways. Our church has currently 557 members. That includes children, people that are committed to our church and here on a regular basis. I think that's incredible how God has grown us and added so many more people to our body. We have 240 volunteers who serve on a monthly basis through our church that we actually have their names written down. It's not a guess. We know this person, this person, this person volunteers as part of Team Anthem, which is this bigger idea, this bigger vision that we are a team on mission together and we're all serving together, whether that's in a kid's room or in a small group or through an outreach or whatever that might be on a regular basis. 240 volunteers and 71 leaders, which is actually the part I get the most excited about. 71 people who are leading some team or some group of people. They're leading not just an activity or not just a thing, but people within our church. That's incredible. In fact, churches our size almost never have that many leaders as a ratio for the size of our church. That's incredible. I celebrate that, the number of volunteers and the number of leaders. In addition to that, just this last January, as we launched groups for the spring, we now know that there's 270 people who just over the month of January who have been connected with a group, whether that group meets Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday afternoon, Thursday night, whenever that might meet during the week, Tuesday afternoon. There's 270 people, which is incredible. That means a lot of you are bought into the idea that you're not better on your own. You're better together. And I just want to say this morning, group life, just like our Sundays, what happens, and what happens through group life, those are like two tracks that are critical to this train getting to where it's supposed to go. Us being connected in relationships and us being here on Sunday, it's what's happening and what we want to see God do in incredible ways. Thank you to those who lead groups around our church. We have a bunch of leaders in our groups ministry. Grateful for you. You're holding the flag for people being connected and cared for. And when they go through a struggle and they need somebody to pray for, who do they reach out to? They reach out to the people that they know who also love Jesus. So grateful for each one of you. On a financial level, Better Together, we are completely debt-free, first of all, which is incredible. Grateful for that. We are, yes. God has provided for us a great deal of savings that we've been stewarding and thinking how best to use. So we have a good rainy day fund that we've built up at this point. We begin to think about projects in our facility, including the youth building. We've been thinking about a lot of things, how we can give more away to missions and beyond. So we've been stewarding those resources, and we're excited for how God has given to that. And we, on a regular basis, on an annual basis, we continue to spend less than is given on a month-in, month-out basis, where this church is so generous, and so we continue to run surpluses on an ongoing basis. We're in the middle of surplus right now. We finished the last financial year in surplus. Why does that matter? It matters because it causes you to dream about the future rather than being worried about today. You hear that? And when you dream about the future, you start praying about the future, and you start moving into the future rather than worrying about the day that's in front of you. And so we're grateful that we get to be in that place, in that season where we say, God, if you're providing more, what do we need to be doing with the more to further your kingdom and your purposes in the world around us? So that's exciting. Speaking of which, on We Are Better Together, we haven't had a sign out on the road for all this time, and so some of you say, it doesn't look like we're better together, and I get it. You know, it's like we have banners together. That's about all that we have out there. And we ran into a number of snags related to the city who actually the sign that's out there is not in code for our property. It's too tall. Can you believe that? That doesn't look like a tall sign to me. It's too tall, and so we had to go to the city and get an exception. And so now here's a picture of what we're dreaming, what we're planning to build between now and Easter. Out on the front of our property is a 20-foot tall sign. You see the person standing beside it. We got a big exception. Thank God for that. And so we're planning to build that here over the next 8 to 12 weeks out on the front of our property with the ideal goal that it'll be out there before Easter so we can continue to get the word out about who we are and what's happening. And we have a lot of other dreams for our property as well that we're praying through and working through, and excited for all that will come through that. As I close the message this morning here on Vision Sunday, the question is, how can you be involved? And as I close, I want to cast a vision for these anthems not just being organizational anthems, not just Anthem church anthems, but your anthems. Because the church is not an organization, it's the people. And if we live out the anthems, it will be the anthems of our church. So what does that mean? It means for me as Brad, I want to make much of Jesus with my life. I want to do whatever it takes personally, not just the church, but personally do whatever it takes. I want to be committed to giving my best to the next generation of believers, next generation in age, next generation of couples that are being married, next generation of students that are raising up, children raising up. I'm giving my best most days to the next generation at home every single day with my kids. At least trying to. I want to give my best to the next generation. Some of you have grown kids. You're not done. You're grandparents. You still have the chance to give your best to the next generation here in our church, to serve with kids and serve with students, to give your best to the next generation personally. And then to be committed to the idea that you will be better together in your walk with Christ if you're together rather than alone. To say, I'm always going to be better. I'm going to go further, faster in my relationship with God if I'm connected with other believers, that we're sharing life with one another, being better together. And not only that, let me cast a vision for all of you that are in a group. I'd love every single group to sit down, pray through it, wrestle through it, and ask the question, what does it look like for our group to live out these 4 anthems in our group? What does it look like for us to make much of Jesus? That might be the simplicity of every time we meet together, we pray to Jesus. That's acknowledging that he's the only one who can answer our prayers. That might be opening the scriptures together on a regular basis, which our groups do, and making much of Jesus and who he is and what he's accomplishing. Doing whatever it takes. It's like a group sitting down and saying, what's going to be our whatever it takes? What's going to be the thing we're going to do collectively? I know I'm going to do this in my neighbors, but you don't know my neighbors. What can we do? Maybe we can raise money for something. Maybe we can serve at a food pantry downtown. Maybe we can go do some outreach in our neighborhood just together, not the rest of the church, just us as a group doing whatever it takes together. How can we give our best to the next generation, baton pass to other believers, mentor, love, serve the next generation? How can we live out being better together? That means caring for one another, asking what's really happening in life, asking how we can pray for one another, really standing in the gap with one another, being better together. So I want to cast that vision. I want you to think about it. I want you to wrestle with it. I'd like you to journal about it. I'd like you to pray about it and say, God, what does it look like for me to live this out? And what does it look like for this group that I'm part of? If you're not part of a group, maybe that's your next step. Just finding a group to connect with. Start a group. Be part of an existing group. Maybe that's to say, God, in our church, I'm part of the mission. I believe in the church, but I'm not really part of Team Anthem and what God's doing around the church. How can you help me to be part of our whatever it takes? Which includes a lot of what happens on Sunday, a lot of what happens during the week, a lot of outreaches. How can I be part of that and engage with that together? Others of you, you've been coming to church, you love the church, you're like, this is my church. People ask you, you're like, I'm part of Anthem. But you're not like, when I said 557, you're not sure if your name's on that or not. You're not sure how that list gets created, and you haven't officially become part of Anthem. We'd love for you to officially be part of Anthem, to say, this is my church, so we can know, so we can care, so we can reach out to you and actually respond like this is you're part of this body here at Team Anthem. And then last but not least is to invite. Church, there are people in our community and world, and we have many things to invite them into. Invite them into our homes, invite them into our church, invite them into what God's doing among us. That is critical to the future, what God wants to do through us. I'm way over time, and those of you that have looked back at the clock see that we have a timer at the back. I hope you will allow me to not apologize for that today, because I just believe in the mission of Jesus. And that's all I really believe in. I don't believe in a whole lot more than that. I believe in the mission of Jesus, the person of Jesus, and I just desperately want you to catch the virus I've caught. Not the sick virus. I wash my hands a lot when I'm around here and I'm sick, but I want you to catch that thing that when you get that bug and you encounter Jesus, you just aren't ever the same. And you stop living for just the little mundane things of life and you start giving yourself to something that's just gonna live forever. Don't you wanna do something that lives forever? What we do in the name of Jesus, it lives forever. There's not many things else in this life to do. But what we do with and for Jesus can live forever. And that's worth giving yourself to, and that's worth me going 16 and a half minutes over in the message this morning. I'd like to close and read Matthew chapter 28 again and then pray. Matthew 28, verse 18, Jesus said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations," amen, "baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Lord Jesus, that's your promise and that's your mission. And you could do it without us, but you've invited us in. And you have a purpose and a plan for each one of us, a design, a calling. And you have a design and a calling for our church. And you have a design and calling for every group that's part of our church, every team that's part of our church, and every person that's part of our church. So Lord God, may your will be done. May your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And we need you to be with us every day until you return, because we can't do it on our own. We pray it in your name. And all God's people said, amen. Amen.